Welcome to Miyagi Do Karate. Today, I'm going to teach you the art of fighting without fighting. So recently I made a video teaching you how to fight like you're fresh out of Cobra Kai. Well, today's Miyagi Do. Now, I know I'm not necessarily wearing the white gi, but today we're gonna go over the fighting stance, the kicks, the punches, and the overall style that Miyagi Do has with its karate training. Within each technique, I'll show you a quick example from Karate Kid or Cobra Kai, I'll break it down on my own, and then I'll show you a real life example. With Cobra Kai, we talked about how their stance was low, and they had lower hands to be able to parry a bunch of techniques and fire back with good counters. But Miyagi Do is never strike first. So what does this mean? If you watch it closely enough, if you watch actually any of Miyagi's actual fights, Mr. Miyagi's fights, he never gets into a fighting stance. Now you could argue this is an actor's choice, or you could argue that this was Mr. Miyagi not wanting to create the fight, bringing the fight to him by keeping his hands down. Because they're not trying to fight. Miyagi Do is an art of self-defense, of self-preservation, not for causing violence. If you see somebody walking up to you like this, it should give you a pretty good idea that they're about to punch you in your taste buds. Now when you're watching the actual show, Cobra Kai, Miyagi Do style, is definitely a little bit higher. Defensively, Mr. Miyagi was doing a lot of parrying, moving out of the way, a lot of drum techniques, boom boom, we'll talk about that later. However, this doesn't mean that he was standing straight up all the time. He was always a very rooted and balanced person. The Miyagi Do style focused on good balance. A lot of different movements that are actually kind of boxing-esque. Being able to turn on a dime, pivot on your opponent, and then fire back with a strike, whether it be to the groin, to the head, to the neck, or somewhere else that's not cheating, because Miyagi Do fighting is not about sport. This right here tells you that I want to trade punches with you. This right here tells you that I don't want to fight. So he was able to see and perceive things a lot faster because he wasn't fighting with anger. And what better example of Miyagi Do karate is there than Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy's here in the pink. No idea who that guy in the red is. Poor soul, couldn't be me. But let's look at Wonderboy's hands. By keeping them low and out of the way, he's inviting an attack. And then as I attack, he seems to not move. Now, what this actually did to my mindset was make me think, okay, I really shouldn't kick hard. He doesn't seem to be trying to beat me up. And that's the thing about Wonderboy. He doesn't have to try to beat you up. He just does. But let's move on to another example of the Miyagi Do stanceless stance. This one's not pretty for me, but it's for the greater good. Miyagi Do's best defensive weapon isn't its hands. We're all taught, keep your hands up. But in all actuality, Miyagi's hands are for the attack, not for defense. And then this right here is the equivalent of the honk after the chop. And speaking of punches, we should probably address that. Will you come here for a second? Now, as you notice, a lot of the Miyagi Do punches come from the hips. They use the kime a lot, pulling backwards. A lot of movement that starts with the hips and ends with the end of the punch, just like Miyagi said.
What's the matter? You some kind of girl or something?
Karate is a very hips-based game. A lot of their punches, whether it was a straight punch or like ridge hands or something like that, they did a good job of involving hips. And the show stays true to that too. When you watch the Cobra Kai show, it focuses a little bit more on balance. And that's because in the actual plot line itself, Daniel is working on his balance with his life. But a lot of the Karate Kid series of movies focuses a lot on this hip movement. Whether it's Karate Kid 1 and he's throwing the punches on Mr. Miyagi, or it's the 2 with the drum technique. Again, we'll touch on that soon. A lot of movements that go like outside block and then a strike, or like an inside block and then a strike, or getting off the center line and then striking, loading up with defense and then firing back with offense. But the main thing is, if you want to train a Miyagi Do with their punches, you got to be able to swivel a little bit. And there weren't many people who could swivel quite like Lyoto Machida could. You can see here as he moves forwards, his hips go left to right. As he's blitzing forwards and switching stances, his hips keep underneath him the entire time for optimal balance. While the blitz isn't necessarily very Miyagi Do, it is very karate in its purpose, which is to end the fight as quickly as possible without taking damage. So now let's take a second to talk about Miyagi Do's kicks. They wouldn't really throw many kicks. Old school karate actually doesn't throw many kicks because they like to keep themselves more balanced. What's the best way to stay balanced? Keep both feet on the ground. However, this is a movie / TV show. In the video where I teach you how to fight like Cobra Kai, which I recommend you check out after this, we talk about the outside and inside crescent kicks. They throw these a lot, especially Miyagi Do. Now stylistically, the choreographers were on the same page when it came to these inside and outside crescent kicks. When karate started, they didn't have a lot of fancy roundhouse kicks, pretty much no fancy kicks at all. It was like some front snap kicks, the occasional inside-outside crescent kick, and a lot of push kicks. A lot of the attacks you'll see from Mr. Miyagi, especially because he's a smaller man, some back leg front kicks, the little snappy ones that go up to the wasn't necessarily very sports driven. But then also he loves to throw his back spinning rear kick because in a lot of different times in the show, he wasn't only being attacked by one person. Usually there was somebody else. Miyagi Do is a very circular style. Wax on, wax off. Their kicks aren't much different. Outside crescent kicks, inside crescent kicks. And one variation of those types of kicks is the axe kick. Now Andy Hug here was one of the greatest karateka to have ever kicked. He was much more known for his axe kicks, which are somewhat variations of a crescent kick where they come down instead of left to right, like a crescent kick does. Now, like we mentioned before, kicks aren't necessarily something that are super prevalent in traditional karate. Andy Hug here is a Kyokushin practitioner, but those inside to outside kicks are something that are reflected in Miyagi Do karate in the series. Now let's talk about the main thing that makes Miyagi Do karate, the way they train. Miyagi Do loves training in metaphors. It's all about having the deeper meaning that teaches you the training technique without knowing that you learned the training technique. The TV show loves to focus on learning balance through your techniques. Like what would I even... Well, it's all about learning to fight with what you've got when something else doesn't work. So for example, his leg was injured, so he switches and he kicks with his good leg. So while training this on a beach might seem like it's completely pointless and it doesn't really have any purpose, but I've even done this for myself and realized that you can use these techniques. And what tends to happen is that the more you throw these things that look like they'd be unconventional, you find ways to make them work. You could also refer back to the drum technique. Learning to parry and attack at the same time is the main purpose of the drum technique. However, it also teaches you how to move your hips, how to keep your body off the center line during attack. We talk about this like pyramid of doom that I can attack with, right? Everything in this area. The drum technique allows you to get out of that area into the safer zone and then strike back. And we'll talk more about inside and outside blocks in a second, but what I want you to see is the movement and the parrying that are happening with simultaneous strikes. I pull the hand out of the way with the left, fire with the right. Pull the hand out of the way with the left, and fire with the right. And believe it or not, a lot of this is just basic kata. One of the main ways that Miyagi Do teaches its martial arts is through kata, through movement. A lot of people don't like kata. I teach kata to kids. I've learned kata. I've learned plenty of katas. Learning through bunkai, which is the practical application of said katas, is what Miyagi Do really thrives in. So you'll see them doing a lot of like katas like Syuchin from Goju Ryu. They're learning ways to move their body and ways to position their body and techniques to use while still being able to train alone. A lot of the things that they do in kata are these same blocks that you see them training, except they're in a sequence. And within those katas you see techniques like the down block, which I think of as a parry for kicks. You see things like the inside block, outside blocks, designed for parries or hard stops. Then even different stances that are designed to check kicks or sweeps. However, if you want to know more about my opinion on how you can use kata to actually make yourself a better fighter, check out this video here. So yeah, there's how you can fight more like Miyagi Do karate. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it gave you some like sort of information that maybe you didn't have before, or maybe you did have before. Who cares? It's a YouTube video. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Watch the video all the way through. Helps me out a lot. And then of course, you know, subscribe or I'm gonna have Bob kick you.